desperate attempt to revive his deceased daughter, Dr. Gisu begins conducting horrific human experiments. However, his actions are soon uncovered by the police, who intervene and prepare to arrest him. Just as he is about to be taken into custody, a massive earthquake suddenly struck South Korea. In an instant, countless buildings crumble, and the once thriving city of Seoul is reduced to rubble. 3 years pass after this catastrophic event, and with no government left, only a few survivors remain scattered among the ruins. Amidst the wreckage, a man named Ji-won, armed with a bow and arrow, roams the ruins in search of supplies. During his search, he encounters a rare find in this desolate world, a crocodile. To ensure a clean kill, Ji-won ignites his arrow and precisely shoots the crocodile in its eye. Although the creature initially seems dead, it suddenly reanimates and lunges at him, forcing Ji-won to scramble into a nearby car to hide. At that critical moment, a stranger arrives, a powerful man who effortlessly drags the crocodile away and finishes it off with a swift machete strike. They bring the crocodile back to a survivor's camp and set up a small market stall to trade its meat. In these desperate times, food was extremely scarce, and trade was based on goods rather than money. Even seemingly useless items like hats were accepted, as gold and jewelry have lost all value. A wealthy woman tries to barter her luxury watch and jewelry for the crocodile's tail, but only receives a snake in return. She didn't seem to mind though, as she had already set her sights on Namsan, the man who had helped kill the crocodile. Just then, Ji-won spots Suna, a girl he clearly has feelings for, arriving with her grandmother. To express their gratitude toward Namsan for his earlier help, Suna's grandmother presents him with a handmade scarf. Namsan, in turn, gives them the best piece of crocodile meat. However, this brief peace is soon shattered when a car crashes into the camp, and a group of men claiming to be police officers step out. They announce they are searching for a criminal. Without much investigation, they accuse one of the survivors based on his resemblance to a wanted poster and attempt to arrest him. They also see the rich woman and decide to take her too. It became clear that these officers were actually post-apocalyptic bandits using the excuse of law enforcement to kidnap people. The gang leader noticed Suna and, captivated by her youth and beauty, decided not to let her go. As she tried to escape, one of the men grabbed her forcefully. Ji-won could no longer hold back his anger and rushed to defend her, landing punches on the thugs. However, he was quickly overpowered. Seeing Ji-won beaten and bloodied, Namsan, who initially wanted to avoid conflict, finally steps in. As a former boxing champion, Namsan swiftly takes down the thugs. Even when the gang leader attempts a desperate knife attack, Namsan easily subdues him. During the confrontation, Namsan learns from the thug that their leader is called Tiger, a name Namsan remembered well. Tiger had been a boxer too, and was someone Namsan had once defeated. Moreover, he notices the leader carrying a bottle of clean water, a precious resource nearly impossible to find after the earthquake. Namsan asks where they obtained it, and the thug claims that there is a hidden water source, but doesn't reveal the exact location. Namsan didn't harm the gang leader further, but instead told him to deliver a message to Tiger, revealing his own identity, and the thugs fled the camp. The wealthy woman, impressed by Namsan's strength and bravery, shows even more interest in him, but Namsan finds her advances unpleasant and quickly leaves with Ji-won. Before reaching their shelter, they are approached by a group of unusually well-dressed men and women, sharply contrasting the harsh reality around them. Suna explains that these people are not enemies. The woman leading them was her teacher before the disaster. This group claims they have established a secure zone within Seoul, stocked with food, water, and protected by armed guards. Their mission is to find and protect families with teenagers, believing young people represent humanity's future. Namsan remains skeptical of this seemingly ideal opportunity, suspecting it might be too good to be true. However, Suna's grandmother, frail and exhausted after years of hardship, is tempted by the offer. For her sake, Suna reluctantly agrees to go with them. However, Namsan and Ji-won, not being immediate family members, did not qualify, and after surviving together for 3 years, they are forced to part ways. That night, Suna and her grandmother and the other selected survivors were led towards the safe zone. Along the way, they encounter other survivors with children, all relieved and hopeful about a new beginning. The journey was long and tiring, especially for the elderly. When Suna's grandmother begins to falter from fatigue, the teacher proposes sending the older survivors ahead to a medical station, warning that the road ahead will only become harsher. Trusting the teacher, everyone agreed, not suspecting anything sinister. After walking a short distance, the group noticed a car driving toward them, making Suna uneasy for the first time. She found it strange as they were already so close to the safe zone that the elderly could have been transported there directly, yet they hadn't been. However, the children were exhausted and starving after the long journey, and everyone was eager to reach the safe zone quickly. They brushed off Suna's concerns without much thought, and the teacher reassured them, promising that the elderly would be brought along the following morning. Convinced for now, the group boarded the vehicle headed toward the safe zone. Meanwhile, the two elderly people, including Suna's grandmother, who had been separated from them, were unaware of the danger they were walking into. When they arrived at their supposed destination, instead of finding a medical station, they were met only by ruins and a deep, bottomless cliff. As they realized something was wrong, it was already too late. One of the men escorting them suddenly shoved one of the elderly off the cliff, while another stabbed Suna's grandmother in the back. Fortunately, Jiwan and Namsan, still suspicious, had secretly followed them and witnessed the whole scene. Realizing they'd been caught, one of the attackers drew a gun to shoot, but Namsan hurled his machete at him. The other one rushed at Namsan, but Namsan shot him with an arrow. Despite their fatal-looking wounds, the two attackers shockingly pulled out the embedded weapons and stood up as if nothing had happened. Before they could react further, one of the mutants lunged at Namsan, while the other charged at Jiwan. No matter how many times they were knocked down, they kept getting up, unaffected by pain or wounds. Jiwan struggled fiercely and finally managed to subdue his opponent, only to witness him grotesquely sever his own leg in order to break free. Jiwan stared in horror as the now one-legged man continued to pursue him. Just when things seemed hopeless, a mysterious woman appeared out of nowhere. She swiftly took down Jiwan's attacker and decapitated him with ease. At the same time, Namsan had managed to pin his opponent against a wall. He was about to question the strange woman's identity when the injured man launched another attack. The woman reacted instantly, giving Namsan the chance to follow her example and decapitate the second mutant. After mourning and burying Suna's grandmother, the group spent the next day with the mysterious woman, learning who she was and what was really happening. Her name was Yunho. She had once been a Special Forces soldier and had worked with her commander, Pungi, to rescue survivors and establish a safe zone in a largely intact apartment complex. At first, everything went well until Dr. Gisu arrived. Desperate for medical expertise during the apocalypse, Yunho had welcomed him without hesitation, unaware of his true nature. Over time, children began disappearing within the base, and Yunho eventually discovered Gisu's horrifying secret as he had resumed his inhumane experiments on humans. What's worse, Pungi had known about Gisu's activities and had chosen to turn a blind eye. When confronted, Pungi admitted everything to Yunho and even showed her the results of Gisu's experiments. To her shock, a once-dead soldier suddenly revived and stood up again before her eyes. Gisu had survived the earthquake thanks to his experiments, and now he believed he was the first of a new kind of human being. He urged Yunho to undergo the transformation as well, insisting it was the only way to endure the apocalypse. Yunho rejected his madness outright, accusing him of treating children's lives as worthless. When she attempted to expose Gisu, she was restrained by two soldiers loyal to Pungi. Betrayed by her former comrades, Yunho tried to kill Gisu, but was shot and wounded by Pungi before she could. Wounded, she had no choice but to escape by jumping out of a window. Determined to rescue the survivors still trapped inside the base, she sought out Namsan's help. Now everything made sense. The reason they were targeting families with children was to continue Gisu's horrific experiments. Hearing all this, Namsan immediately realized the grave danger Suna was in. Jiwan, overwhelmed by fear and anger, wanted to rush to the base at once. However, attacking recklessly would only get them killed, as the base was guarded by heavily armed soldiers, many of whom now possessed superhuman physical abilities. Then Namsan noticed the mutated men had been carrying bottled water, the same kind they had seen the previous day, and the gang leader had mentioned a base. There had to be a link between Tiger's group and Gisu's base. Meanwhile, Suna and the other survivors had already arrived at the base. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Well-armed guards stood watch. Fresh vegetables grew in abundance. There was endless clean water, and solar panels provided steady power. The survivors appeared genuinely happy, but it was all a carefully constructed illusion created by Gisu. Since Yunho's departure, Gisu had seized control of the community. Children were separated from their families under the pretense of education and rewarded with food based on their academic performance. In truth, the education was brainwashing, and the rewards were bait to manipulate the children into cooperating. Suna and the other newcomers were soon placed into a classroom. The atmosphere was unsettling. The children looked lifeless, and each had strange scars behind their ears. The lessons they were taught were equally bizarre, revolving around human evolution and survival in the new world. Suna's instincts warned her that something was terribly wrong. When she inquired about her grandmother, she was told that the old woman was seriously ill and needed to rest for several days at the medical facility. Suna knew her grandmother had been perfectly healthy earlier, and the explanation didn't make sense. Adding up all the strange clues, Suna grew more and more uneasy, and she decided not to drink the water provided to her. At the same time, Namsan and the others, trying to uncover the connection between Tiger and the base, headed straight for Tiger's hideout. When they arrived, they saw that Tiger's gang and another rival gang were amusing themselves by forcing captured survivors to fight for their entertainment. A disagreement over a lost match quickly escalated into an all-out brawl between the two gangs. The chaos only subsided when Namsan showed up. Upon seeing Namsan, the man who had previously defeated him, Tiger was immediately filled with rage. Both gangs put aside their fight and turned their attention to Namsan's group. However, none of them were a match for Namsan's overwhelming strength, as his punches took opponents down instantly. With a skilled Special Forces soldier on his side, the situation quickly turned in Namsan's favor. Meanwhile, Jiwan used the opportunity to free the captive survivors. Before long, all of Tiger's henchmen were subdued, leaving only Tiger himself. The two old rivals faced each other once more, but this time, Tiger went down with just a single punch. Seeing this, the remaining gang members fled in panic. Namsan demanded to know where the pure water came from and exactly how Tiger's gang was linked to the base. Tiger, trying to avoid further pain, immediately confessed. He revealed that they had been trading captured survivors to the base residents in exchange for bottles of pure water. At first, the base accepted survivors of all ages, but lately, they only wanted teenagers. Tiger, however, had no idea that these teenagers were being subjected to live human experiments. Upon hearing this, Namsan delivered another punch that knocked Tiger out. Without wasting any time, they loaded Tiger and his captured men onto a truck and drove straight toward the base. Meanwhile, inside the base, Suna had quietly slipped away from the others, determined to uncover the dark secrets hidden within. By accident, she stumbled into Gisu's office, where she discovered shocking evidence of his horrific experiments and the true suffering of the children. She then opened another door and found a young girl lying unconscious on a bed, already a victim of Gisu's experimentation. Suddenly, footsteps approached. It was Gisu, accompanied by the girl's parents. Upon seeing their daughter's condition, her parents were horrified. Gisu calmly explained that their daughter was undergoing a transformation, even proudly showing them his own half-mutated daughter as an example. The couple was horrified and attempted to take their daughter away. However, in their panic, they disrupted the experiment, causing the girl to suffer a violent reaction and die on the spot. Furious that his experiment had been ruined, Gisu brutally killed the girl's parents without hesitation. Suna, hiding in a corner, witnessed the entire horrific scene but accidentally made a small noise, drawing Gisu's attention. He quickly captured her and tied her to the bed, intending to use her as the next test subject. While preparing his tools, Gisu coldly told Suna about her grandmother's death. Before Suna could even process the grief, Gisu cruelly slit her throat. At the same time, Namsan and his team arrived at the base entrance. Their plan was to have Tiger and his men pose as a survivor delivery to get inside. However, the soldiers at the gate grew suspicious since it wasn't a scheduled delivery day. Realizing there was no other option, Namsan decided to force their way in. Under heavy gunfire, they rammed the truck through the gates and managed to drive deep into the compound before stopping. Their first goal was to rescue Yunho's captured comrades and then free the rest of the survivors. But when they reached the dungeon, they immediately sensed that something was wrong. There were no guards following them, and strangely, the cell doors were unlocked. When the prisoners turned around, they realized that Yunho's former comrades had already been subjected to Gisu's experiments and turned into emotionless zombie-like creatures. In an instant, the zombies swarmed toward them. Namsan quickly stepped forward, taking down several with powerful blows. Jiwan also managed to shoot down an attacking zombie. However, seeing her old comrades in this condition left Yunho frozen with shock. Jiwan rushed to protect her and pulled her back to her senses. Together, they fought back fiercely, quickly reducing the zombie numbers. Just then, Gisu's voice blared over the loudspeakers across the base. He warned all the survivors that intruders had entered and instructed them not to leave their rooms. He then threatened Namsan's group, demanding that they leave immediately or suffer the consequences. Not interested in listening to threats, Namsan smashed the speaker with a single punch. At the same time, Gisu's soldiers surrounded them. Sensing movement outside the door, Namsan immediately fired through it, wiping out a group of enemies in one shot. But more soldiers kept coming, forcing them to split up to survive. Jiwan and Yunho headed upstairs to rescue the survivors, leaving Namsan behind to hold off the advancing soldiers. After the fight, Namsan discovered a room filled with survivors, who informed him about Suna's location. On his way upstairs, he picked up a rifle, only to find it empty, but he still kept it for support, as climbing the stairs was tougher for him than fighting. Meanwhile, Yunho ran into serious trouble when she encountered Bungi. Having undergone modifications, Bungi had become incredibly powerful, and after a few exchanges, he easily overpowered Yunho and threw her aside. Elsewhere, Ji-won reached the classroom and used his gun to force a teacher to lead him to Suna. However, on their way, they ran into Bungi again. Thankfully, Namsan arrived just in time. He told Ji-won to continue forward while he stayed behind to deal with Bungi. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, Gisu was conducting another experiment, using Suna as a test subject. He had just injected himself with a newly developed serum when Suna suddenly woke up, surprising him with how quickly she regained consciousness. However, it wasn't long before Gisu noticed something wrong with his body. The injection was causing severe side effects. It turned out that for the drug to work properly, the person had to drink the special water prepared by Gisu. Since Suna had never drunk it, Gisu's new drug had a disastrous effect on himself instead. Gisu prepared to kill Suna, but just then, Ji-won arrived, still holding the teacher hostage. Gisu, however, used Suna as a shield and forced Ji-won to drop his weapon. At that moment, a female soldier appeared and knocked Ji-won down. Gisu picked up the grenade Ji-won had dropped and ordered his men to pack his daughter into a suitcase so they could escape immediately. Meanwhile, the fierce battle between Namsan and Pungi raged on. Although Pungi's strength had been massively enhanced, Namsan managed to maintain the upper hand through sheer willpower. In the end, he managed to throw Pungi out a window and use the shards of glass to decapitate him. Back in the lab, Gisu was preparing to flee when Namsan arrived just in time. Namsan quickly grabbed the female soldier's pistol and shot the teacher without hesitation. Gisu abandoned the wounded teacher without a second thought and dropped the grenade he had picked up earlier. The explosion tore through the area, but Namsan shielded himself with a door and managed to rescue the others. As they moved to pursue Gisu, they encountered Yunho, who had regained consciousness in the hallway. Meanwhile, Gisu and the suitcase containing his daughter reached the ground floor. But there, a crowd of survivors who had learned the truth about his experiments was waiting for him. Overcome with rage, they attacked Gisu and destroyed his research materials. In response, Gisu let out a deafening roar that terrified the crowd into stepping back. It turned out the experimental drug he had injected was causing his body to mutate uncontrollably. Seeing his life's work and his only hope to save his daughter destroyed, Gisu completely lost his sanity. He grabbed a weapon from the ground and opened fire on the survivors. However, when Gisu briefly regained awareness, he realized in horror that the suitcase had been hit during the chaos. He opened it and found that his daughter had been fatally wounded. Gisu's emotional breakdown accelerated his mutation even further. At that moment, Namsan finally arrived at the ground floor, only to be met with Gisu's wild gunfire. Soon after, Suna and the others caught up. Suna's heartfelt words caused Gisu to break down completely, tears streaming down his monstrous face. Consumed by madness, Gisu prepared to launch another attack. But before he could act, Namsan shot him, putting an end to his tragic rampage. Though Gisu had committed horrific crimes, it was clear that, at his core, he had been a father desperate to save his child. As he died, the long-absent rain began to fall from the sky, and Namsan and the others returned to their original camp. There, the wealthy woman, who had survived with them, finally summoned the courage to confess her feelings to Namsan.